Ma'am, excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah, are we ready?
Ma'am. Welcome to second section, ma'am. We will start.
Hello. Now moving on. In the first lecture, I focused more on how to use AI, particularly Gen AI or the Chat GPT, in our teaching and research activities, especially focusing on the Socratic method, that is challenging and partnering with Chat GPT to think better and do better. That was our main motto. Now, in the second one, I am more focusing on what is called as the ethics of AI, which the question was raised in the first session also, because you have all this capabilities today. From capability, how do we move towards responsibility? Because there is domain within AI, which many AI researchers are focusing on, that's called the responsible AI. Responsible AI, which includes ethical, some people use the word ethics, some people use the word responsible AI also. So that's called the responsible AI. In fact, I have done a couple of interviews with some eminent people on the role of responsible AI. In fact, one of the well-known authors of a book on modern information retrieval, Ricardo Bezaez, is a good friend of mine. I have done two interviews. One interview is already published. That was 4 years back, which was published before ChatGPT was announced or released, about large language models. And there also he brings in some of these issues of responsibility or ethics involved in AI. Ricardo Bezaez is one expert. He's a data scientist, he's a professor. He used to work for Yahoo. He's worked in both corporate and what I call as the ethical issues of AI within the corporate sector as well as some startups. And now he's also a professor at different universities. So I'm just giving one example of Ricardo Bezaez, who is recognized, he's a ACM distinguished fellow and all that. The reason is there are people who are working on responsible AI. The amount of research that is going on is also increasing in this area of responsible AI. So that's another major, apart from capabilities, how to improve capabilities, how to accelerate capabilities, we also have to think about and concern ourselves with the responsibility issue as well. Okay. So it's some of these issues are, in the first slide, I have tried to put them together with the help of course, Chat GPT, or maybe I don't know whether I use Chat GPT or I use Google or any of those things to create images. Sometimes Microsoft Designer also I use. I don't remember which one I have used for this, but anyway, I said I wanted to highlight the capability on the left side and then the responsibility on the right side. Okay. As you can see here, on the left side, we have the capability. The capabilities, that is, of course, the power. In fact, the article that I published about the interview with Ricardo Bezaez was the power and pitfalls of large language models. The power is humongous. That is one thing that we need to acknowledge, recognize, and work with. We can certainly know nobody can match, no amount of responsible AI can match the power of AI. So it is powerful in terms of speed. Within minutes, it can generate anything that you want, and powerful in terms of it can automate. There is no field today which has not been impacted by AI. Education is just one of them. Healthcare, for example. Or, one other topic or a project that I worked with, just completed, that is Royal Academy of Engineering had funded a team project. I was one of the team members about digital public infrastructure. That is, how do we use public infrastructure for making, particularly for my case study was on transport in Mysore. Transport, right? So whether it is transport, whether it is healthcare, whether it is robotics, whatever you have automation, right? We get like this, for example, Amazon or any of this, because their huge warehouses are automated. So it can pick up the item that you want. It is sorted, it can be picked up and delivered. So speed is one, automation is another, and the other important thing is prediction. As you know, ChatGPT is primarily a predictive analytics. In the sense, it can predict what is the next term or the word that should come. So it's primarily, it is in fact, today it is so, the scale of, there is humongous scale of this AI enterprise is so much that trillions of dollars are being spent on AI itself, and particularly, for example, when you think of, I'll come to the responsibility part. I think you must have read about the humongous water and other resources these data centers consume. That's another point of debate, right? Everybody is talking about the humongous amount of water resources that these huge data centers consume. In fact, my son works for he's an investment banker. He works for an investment company in New York. He says, Mom, you cannot even imagine the amount of money that is going into data centers, because he's focused on it, because he has done both. He's an engineer as well as a finance person. So amount of money that is going into these data centers. It cannot be imagined, because, in fact, we are, economists, which is like, she's Indian, in the sense Indian origin, but she's you might have heard of Geeta Gopinath, right? Geeta Gopinath has been talking about, as she was IMF chief and all that, she's a professor at Harvard. One of the reasons, why the world, particularly our US especially, the economy seems to be doing well is because of the investments in AI. Despite the war, despite all of that is happening, economy should have spiraled down. But it has not spiraled down, mainly because we are seeing the investments that are going to the AI. So huge investments are going. So it looks like everything is okay, because economy-wise it is not, it's not looking bad. But then we have to understand the responsible part, particularly, as I said, the environment. So that's why on the right side, I have put all these issues here. I'll start with society, the last one, that is societal good. The societal good, that is, as I said, now everybody is talking about the issues of environment, the water resource that, because as it is, water is a major problem, right? All the in underground water resources we have already depleted. So where will we get water? So, but because these data centers are consuming so much water. So AI for a just and sustainable future. Societal good refers to sustainable future. So when we talk about, in fact, in any business, as you know, I founded and ran a business school. We say triple bottom line was our motto. What is the meaning of triple bottom line? See, in any business, profitability is very important. Of course, business means profits, right? But business cannot be just profit oriented. We say it should be the three P's: people and the planet. So go beyond profits. You have to think about people, that is people in the sense of humans, human beings, society, etc. And we also have to think about the planet, that is sustainable. What will happen, because climate change is one of the major problems that everybody is facing. So societal good is one responsibility. The other one is accountability, answerable for impacts, right? Who is answerable for impacts? Just to give you an example, you not only need, of course, I have given that example in my, so I'll just show you, this was in today's Deccan Herald newspaper. Okay, maybe you cannot say, I will show you the difference. It says about food must not depend on a face. The title of the article is Food Must Not Depend on a Face. Why? They are using facial recognition to identify who needs to be given, this food coupons or, poverty related welfare schemes, right? And because of the algorithm, this is not only in India, it is happening everywhere. They're using algorithms to decide who should get, for example, social benefit. They're using algorithms to decide who should get, what should be the premium for your health insurance. Those kinds of decisions are being taken by algorithms, right? The problem with that is it's not accountable. Who's answerable to this impact? Okay. Then, of course, the other major issue is the privacy. We have all heard about the data leak and all of that, right? So, privacy is another issue. We have to respect the data and dignity of people. Transparency. Transparency, what we mean by transparency is, see, when ChatGPT throws up answer or any AI throws up, even the person who has designed that system does not know how it has come up with that answer. That is the lack of transparency. That is what we call as opaqueness. There is so much opaqueness, nobody knows, not even the designer, not even the person who has developed the model knows exactly how it works, why it is throwing that answer. So there is no transparency. Another important issue is that of fairness. That is equity and justice for all. Is it fair? Are we creating an equitable society? Then the most fundamental issue is that of human agency. That is what is referred to as the existential crisis. Remember in the beginning, in my first talk, I mentioned about the philosopher Rene Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. That is, he was trying to prove the existence of human beings mainly based on their thinking capability, right? So today we are talking about human beings not being involved in anything. So humans as an agency is almost vanishing in our decision-making processes. That is what is the responsibility that we need to keep in mind when it comes to human agency. So with this general outline, now I'll move to the okay. See, before I go to the specific issue, I thought I would highlight just the last Monday, actually, just 1 week back, for my InfoFire podcast, I interviewed the author of the book, The AI Con. That is the title of her book. One of the authors is Emily Bender. She's a professor at University of Washington. You can see her. You can see the faces here. The hype and the hoopla about AI. She's written many books. This is one of the books. I have also got that book, and we were just showing each other this book in our interview. The point I'm saying, in this book, Emily highlights how we need to fight big tech's hype and create the future we want. That is, we need to create the future we want and not let the big tech companies, whether it is OpenAI, whether it is Grok or Elon Musk or Google or whichever, we cannot let them to decide our future. Everybody should be involved in this decision-making process. So the hype and the hoopla is real because it's hyped up. We are all using it. Everybody is excited. In fact, Emily calls two categories of people. One is the hyping people in one sense of, boosters. She calls it as AI boosters. AI boosters are those who are boosting AI because they have big companies. So they boost AI. And there are doomers. Doomers are those who are talking about, oh, we lose control. Nobody's here. That is doomsday specialists. But then both are actually creating this hype about, in the sense, essentially, we are giving too much power to AI. When we look at the negative side also or the positive side, that is what Emily Bender talks about. So I thought I would, since I just did this interview 1 week back, I thought I would highlight because this is about responsible AI. And responsible AI creation or development of a responsible AI system is with all of us as individuals as well as authors, such as, especially, she's a linguist actually. Emily Bender is a computational linguist. She has written many books. So she is now, her latest book, last year she published this book that is called AI Con. Okay. The point I'm trying to say here is that we need to be wary of this. So in this book, the authors present AI as a marketing umbrella. The problem with that, what they're saying, there is nothing like AI technology. There are various technologies, and everything is put under the umbrella of AI as for marketing purposes to encourage audiences to infer understanding and agency where none exist. What the authors or Emily Bender says is there is no understanding in case of ChatGPT or other AI models, and there is no agency. Agency in the sense no one is existing behind that. There is no human being. Whom do you hold it responsible for? Okay. There are any number of examples that are cited in this book. You might be familiar that there are now self-driving cars, right? Elon Musk has given Tesla, there are self-driving cars. Just think of one example. If there is an accident, which has happened before, accident happen even when human beings are driving. But the thing is, when humans are driving, you hold the driver responsible, right? Correct? There is a law which says the driver is held responsible. The tragedy has happened, but somebody is responsible there when humans as agency are there. When it is that is automated, self-driving car, whom do you hold responsible? Is it the software you're holding? It's not a person. Then behind software, there are so many people who have developed it. The company that has developed it, the software, the question becomes very, very difficult to answer, right? That is the meaning of agency, because there is no agency that exists behind it. So they argue that readers should treat such language skeptically, that is, be skeptical about what the AI does, and to separate specific automated tasks from broad claims of intelligence. So their thing is there is nothing called intelligence there. They are capable of doing certain automated tasks. So this book has become quite popular. The Guardian newspaper praised the book's myth-busting approach. In fact, just to give an example, I talked about healthcare, right? Healthcare is one area where AI has actually advanced so much. I agree. There is so much of advancement that has happened in healthcare because of AI. But at the same time, we have to be more realistic, and we also have to be more skeptical. One of the AI experts, Hinton, in the year 2016, Professor Hinton said that we don't need any more radiologists because image processing has advanced so much. We don't need radiologists at all. Radiologists' work can be done by, we don't need to train radiologists. An expert like that, he made that comment in the year 2016. But 10 years down the line, actually, if you see, we still need radiologists. We are using AI, but we still need radiologists. And the training, and according to US labor data, number of radiologists is increasing. And also, training for radiologists has increased. So why I mentioned this, or this book also mentions that, is because I had cited Hinton in one of my articles earlier, saying that he says this what will be the future of AI. Because I have done one episode on AI in scientific research. The key question is, that is a hype, that we don't need this, etc. But when are we achieving that? It's still a long way, number one. Number two, before we get there, everyone has to think about and implement responsible. So this is the article that just now I showed you in Deccan Herald that has come in today's newspaper. Algorithmic exclusion, when a face match decides who eats. Who eats in the sense, as I was telling you about the social welfare schemes in Chhattisgarh. Okay. So portion tracker, a systemic algorithm failures are leaving India's most vulnerable mothers and children hungry. They are not getting the full, mainly because the AI decided that they don't deserve to get the scheme, come under the scheme. So these are one of the examples of negative or consequences of con, as Emily Bender uses in her title, AI con. This is the AI con that we are seeing. Okay. So this is just one example which I mentioned. So the central thing here is we need to understand is AI capability is accelerating. There is no doubt about it. It is accelerating by leaps and bounds. But the question is, what should we do? It doesn't answer that question. The ethical question is not whether AI can do it, but the ethical question is whether it can do it, when, why, and how it should do. That is the ethics behind, that is the responsible AI. Whether something should be done by AI or it should not be done by AI. For example, I don't know whether some of you might know that Windsurf is considered as the father of the internet, one of the founding fathers of internet, because he is the one who developed the TCP/IP. I know him and I did an interview of Windsurf. It's also available in my InfoFire series. And I asked him what he thinks of AI. This was about 3 years back. I think this was in 2023. What he thinks of AI and how it can be used. He said there are areas where we should be using them. So in case of healthcare, he said telemedicine, yes, but telesurgery, no. Okay, that was his view some 3 years back. So when we should use it, whether we should use it for surgery or not, telesurgery, no, right? Because the consequences are fatal. It could be fatal. That is the reason he said telemedicine is different, because you are diagnosing your etc. Human intervention is there, but telemedicine is okay, but not tele surgery. So when to use it, why and how it should be used. For example, there is one area within, not exactly AI, but AI, it's called the brain-computer interface, BCI it is called. Brain-computer interface is being used. That's one healthcare application where it is being used. In some areas, yes, very well. One area, in fact, Windsurf himself uses, in the ear, some people are born with some hearing problem. It's called cochlear transplant. So there is actually a chip that is used to make them hear. In such, yes, it can be used, but not in every case. So that's the point. The ethical question is, when should we use it? When it should not be used? Whether, how, etc. are the questions. So this whole field is known as not just ethical, well, as I said before, responsible AI. They call it as the responsible AI. So basically, responsible AI, they are AI principles or core rules used to design. What are the rules that you have to use while designing, building, and using artificial intelligence safely and fairly? That is the area what is known as responsible AI. While designing and building AI systems, we should ensure safety and fairness. Okay. The core principles are, one is, as I said, fairness. That is, treat all people and groups equally. There is always a bias. You might have read about it, especially in the US. For example, there is racial bias. Face recognition systems are used to identify potential criminals, for example, right? And invariably, most of the people who are identified as potential criminals are Black people, because there is a clear racial bias in the training sets. It could be whatever is the reason for the bias. So it's not fair. So that's the point here. Remove bad bias from training data. So we have to, that's one way of building responsible AI systems. You have to ensure that the training data itself, because as you know, AI is based on the AI performance is based on the training data, right? So we need to ensure that there is no bad bias from training data. The second important thing is reliability and safety. In fact, I did not want to use that word because I know it is a kind of a 4-letter word, but Emily Bender says that ChatGPT gives shitty responses. You cannot rely on them always. So we should ensure that it is a reliable. They are unreliable. So you have to ensure, you have to make sure that both AI researchers, AI system developers, and the big tech companies have to ensure that system works the right way every time. Every time. See, one of the things that we always say is, okay, even for example, when you see any, let's say, Dettol or any such antiseptic cream, do you read that it says 99% germs are removed? Have you observed that, right? So generally, even in AI, it is not even 99%, 95% it is correct, let us say. For a minute, you assume that 95% it is correct. But remember, when it is wrong 5% of the time, do you know when it is wrong, number one? And what could happen with that wrong? It could be fatal. It could be very consequential, right? So that is why we all know that it can never be 100%, even in cases. That's why I gave you the example of antiseptic lotions and things like that, where they say only 99% germs are killed. We'll never, because that's called as the residual uncertainty. There is always be some residual thing, however much you remove. So one has to be very careful about using AI for indiscriminately in all aspects without human oversight. Okay. So you have to stop unexpected errors. And the other important thing is privacy and security. Okay. We already have talked about it. User data safe and private. Inclusiveness is another principle. These are the principles of responsibility. Build tools that help all people. Leave no one out. So inclusivity is important because you can't say, well, it works for 90% of the people. You can't say only 10% are not covered. No, it has to be inclusive. And I already mentioned about transparency. Make AI choices clear so that we know what we are. As I said, we don't know why it is giving that answer. We should know why that answer is given, right? So transparency and accountability. So these are the core principles of what is known as responsible AI, which every company at every step of the way, they are supposed to introduce, manage, and implement. But the key question is to what extent they will do it. Because we all know, end of the day, don't think that I'm against businesses, but end of the day, business is all about profit. Okay? Always the profit, because that's their core principle, right? Businesses, they are answerable to their shareholders. And shareholders are only looking at profits, right? So that is why it cannot be in the hands of only businesses. That is the crux of the issue here. Governments have to be involved. Regulations are important. So you need to have appropriate regulations. Government have to introduce regulations in case of whether it is Privacy Act or whatever act that are required, okay, in order to ensure all of this, inclusiveness, accountability, etc. So we talked in the first session about tools, right? So from tools, they're becoming agents, right? Agency, remember we talked about the concept of agency. So as autonomy increases, so does the need for responsibility. So there has to be more responsibility. As we say, no, you get more autonomy means that more responsibility. So the more we delegate, the more carefully we must go. One of the principles is, for example, even when I was, I'm just sharing one personal, unrelated in the sense, abstract, it's a metaphor. When I was 10 or 12, my mother asked me to learn how to sweep the floor. I said, why should I learn to sweep the floor? I can always hire somebody to sweep the floor. That was the answer I gave my mother because she wanted me to learn. She said, only when you learn, when you become, I mean, in Kannada, she said, Alaga ballavanu arasanaga balla. That means only when you become a maid or a servant, you can be a master. You can't be a master without being a servant first. That means if you want to delegate work to somebody, you have to be actually a master at that. Otherwise, you can't get the work done properly. Unless you know how it is done. Unless I know how to cook something, I can't ask my cook to cook something, right? I have to know that. Similarly, when we in about 20 years back, this outsourcing became very, common thing. So when I started developing my Vidyanidhi digital library project, we were scanning. All scanning was not done by us, right? So we used to outsource it to different companies. So the most important thing when it comes to outsourcing also, they say is first you do it, you learn what are the issues that are involved, you develop standards, follow standards, and give clear instructions from what should be the DPI, what should be for, and so only then you get better work done. So we had developed that when I started giving thesis scanning to companies. I said these are the things that you have to follow. So the point I'm trying to make here is if you want to delegate work, you have to be careful and we have to have clarity in our governance of that. That's the point I'm saying. So basically, capability says, can the system do it? Responsibility says, should it do it? Who decides, who benefits, and who bears the risk? These are the issues. So, capability does not translate to responsibility. So, that's why the foundation thing here is ethics is important and it is different. Okay. Because we are talking about, remember, I said scale. Just one algorithm can affect millions of people. One small change here, you might have heard of this, what is called as butterfly effect, right? Butterfly effect means butterfly somewhere it's a tiny thing, but it will affect the climate in some faraway land. So similarly, scale, what happens is one small bug in the algorithm can affect the lives or issues of millions of people. So scale, that's one, that's why ethics are important. Opacity. I already said nobody knows exactly how it works. Even OpenAI, Sam Altman, whoever it is, whether he's the CEO of OpenAI or even including Elon Musk, nobody knows how these systems are working. Okay, so that is why it's called opaque. So when decisions are made and when you cannot explain how that decision has been arrived. See, one of the things about human beings, if somebody asks me, how did you come to this conclusion? How did you decide this is what you want to do? Then we say, okay, step by step, this is the reason I chose this, right? But in case of AI, no such transparency is there. The other one is speed. It is so fast, within a blink of an eye, it happens, right? So it can outrun institutionalizing. It has taken us, ages to reach this stage, but AI reaches the stage within years. So that's why it's important for us to introduce ethics at each and every step of AI, from designing to deployment. We need to adopt that. The feedback loop, as I said, is very important. It can keep, as you know, feedback is you might have experienced it, right? Yeah, also ChatGPT also asks sometimes your feedback. It gives you two responses and says which one do you prefer. Feedback we are all familiar, even in Google, etc. It's always based on relevance feedback. If you click a particular link in Google, it takes it as a positive feedback. If you don't click, well, it takes it as you did not like it, so you did not use. So feedback loop is important. Okay. So, what are the important things in ethics? Remember, I said in the very beginning, individual ethics. As an individual, what I should do. Should I do this? Should I not do this? When it comes to that, as we were talking about, as an author, as a teacher, How much I should use, when I should use AI, etc., is my decision, and I have to follow ethics in that. Okay, we discussed that, whether it is citation, whether it is English, whether it is examples, whatever. We need to be clear about when are we using it. And as I said before, it should be our work. Essentially, it would be our voice. Well, we take the assistance of ChatGPT to make it better. It should be, we should think better and we should make it. So that is one, individual ethics. Next level is professional ethics. As a librarian, let us say, for example, I mean, I'm saying librarians are library professionals. What is my professional ethics? What my role requires? I'll come to this one aspect. For example, today, what is happening in social media because of ChatGPT? Because ChatGPT, if you have observed, if you ask a question, it not just goes to books or other, validated information. It picks up information from social media, right? So the answers that you are getting are also influenced by the social media. And we all know so much of disinformation is happening, right? So, as librarians, remember one of the major roles of libraries and librarians is trusted, verified information. So, are we doing that? In fact, I keep saying that, disinformation, fake news, etc., has become such a major, I would say, challenge or a problem. Librarians could have actually seized that opportunity and put themselves in the forefront of this disinformation, but we did not do it. See, once upon a time, people would come to library to get verified information. Today, they go to social media, right? So we should have taken that, okay, you have a question, you want to know whether it is fake news or not. There are other, platforms now which detect fake news, right? So we should have been, that is when I say we, I mean library information professional. Ethics refers to us to be careful when it comes to detecting, spreading, and red flagging, that is alerting people about fake news. I was telling about different, WhatsApp groups, and people say, oh, you are a fact checker. Yes, that is I said, I'm trained to be that. That is my professional ethics. If you forward some fake news, I'm going to flag it as fake news. Even though it annoys them, it annoys the person who has forwarded that fake news. I said it is fake news, whoever it is. It may be a very eminent person or whoever it is. I say it is fake news. And I give the actual reference where it is shown as fake news. The point is that this our professional ethics. I said I'm not doing this as Shalini Aras. I'm doing it as a professional in the field of information sciences. Okay, so organizational growth. So what institutions can permit? So in fact, in India we don't have. Some of you raised the issue of Chat GPT, really, produced articles being. So in many of the Western countries, each university or academic institution has its own ethics committee where your papers, etc., are actually reviewed before you actually send it. One, it helps you to do it better. Do they also flag it before it goes out to the institution? So institutions also have responsibility towards this. So institutional governance, then of course public regulation, that is government regulation. Now we have some new regulations coming in AI, and whether it is AI or disinformation, we have some. I'm not going to the details of it because the laws themselves are so many. But I must tell you in this respect, the EU, that is European Union, generally comes up with better regulation when it comes to AI or any governance. So if you want to follow any governance of any country, it is always more than the US. It is the European Unions which come up with this guidelines and AI guidelines or AI governance, etc. So that is what we should think about. Cite and follow the global norms, what humanity should protect. End of the day, we have to look at what we should be protecting. So, words always matter. What kind of words that we use? Remember, when I say words, as a woman, let me tell you this example. This, of course, until then I had not even thought about it. of course, the meaning of history comes from a different etymological reason. The word history, right? When my daughter, she was hardly 5, 6 years old, she said, why is it called history and not her story? It is not only his story, but it is her story too, right? So the point I'm saying, words are important. What kind of words that we use? So here we have to look at, when it comes to responsibility, the shift in vocabulary, the kind of words that we use. So from responsible AI as a slogan, we have to say responsibility as a distributed practice. See, we are very good at slogan coining, right? In India, especially, we coin different slogans. It's important. Slogans are important. Nobody says slogans are, because that moves people and it energizes people. But what is more important is the practice of it. So that's why here it's about responsibility as a distributed practice. It's not just one person or one individual. Everybody has to practice that. Whether they are platforms, they have to flag, for example, fake news. People have to flag fake news, or institutions or groups have to flag. So whether they are, as I already said, whether you are a designer or a deployer or a user or institution or everybody has to take responsibility in the ethical AI. I come back to this agency thing because this is one of the, whether, I don't know whether you heard of this famous author, Yuval Harari. He has written many books on, for example, one of his famous books is Homo sapiens. Okay. Homo sapiens is one of his he became famous with that book. He has also written many other books. For example, one of the other books, more recent, he talks also about AI and all these things, Yuval Harari. So he talks about this question of, human agency. We are still should be the human agency who are handling, managing everything. It should not be relegated to machines. So that's why it's important that we need to augment the human agency, not replace it. End of the day, decision has to be by the human being. End of the day, there should be somebody who is responsible, responsible for the decisions that are taken. Okay. So, for example, I write papers. See, when you write papers, they ask for division of labor, right? Who has done what work? So, if there is a chat GPT that is used, we have to say we have used chat GPT for this purpose only. That is the role of chat GPT in my paper. We have to be clear in delineating the role. Those norms will come slowly. I think already some journals are insisting that you clearly indicate to what extent you have used ChatGPT. They are not discouraging the use of ChatGPT in writing papers, but they are saying that you have to be clear and also delineate that. Okay. So a human in the loop is not enough if the human cannot understand, question, or override the system. In the sense, this particularly, in warfare, they have now started using these drones and, automated warfare, right? So when you use automated warfare, who takes the decision finally? To shoot or to drop a bomb or to do whatever, there has to be one person at least who is responsible for that decision. And to override it, the automated system may say, okay, we'll kill this person. But there should be somebody on top of it, and we should design a system like that, right? It should not be like, the AI should say, no, I don't listen to you, I will do what I want. And that is the, scary part of it. If we don't apply ethics or responsible AI, soon we may find automated systems where they take a decision to kill anybody. They think that, oh, this person looks like a robber. Okay, go and kill. Human beings also do some such mistakes, but at least one person is responsible. But here there is nobody who is responsible, right? So meaningful human control, what does it mean? You cannot just be controlling unless you have the competence. So what does that mean? Implication is what? Human beings have to be trained and they should have more intelligence, more capability than the automated system. That is the crux of the ethics. You cannot have an automated system which is more intelligent than the human or more capable than the human. But you should have a capable person or team of people who have the competence, who have the authority and the time. Remember the time. That's why, for example, one of the existential, I would say, crisis that the humanity overcame, at least partly or more largely, is remember during the Second World War when atom bomb was developed, right? For the first time, atom bomb was developed, and atom bomb. That's why I asked you to even watch that. I mean, I have the book also, but then you watch the movie also, Oppenheimer. This is the Oppenheimer book, right? So this Oppenheimer book or book more, if you are interested in book, you read the book. You also, I would recommend you to watch that movie, primarily because, World War II, of course, it's a movie that's there. It's fictionalized, but, movies are more engaging, right? So after World War II, because that Oppenheimer is mainly about how the atom bomb was developed, how it came together and developed. But the issue is, once it was developed and deployed in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the world realized the catastrophe it can cause, right? And then the world came together in being more responsible and coming together in halting that. So since then, atom bomb has not been, our nuclear weapons have not been used. So I always say, whenever I'm giving a talk on AI, I said, I am a positive person. I believe we are going to see such a scenario when it comes to AI also, when it comes to autonomous robots or whatever, I mean, robots or machines, etc., that there is an authority behind that and the time. Why I mention time is, there were this, NCBS nuclear vehicles between Russia when during the height of the US and Russia war. Within few minutes, the presidents have to take a decision to launch the nuclear weapon. They realized that within 5 minutes, because the signals show something, the sensors show that this is coming, etc., they had to take it. They said this is wrong. Hair trigger, it was called hair trigger nuclear. They stepped back and said it should not. That's why I mentioned the time factor. Such catastrophic decisions cannot be taken in hair trigger reaction wise, right? There should be enough time for leaders. There should be enough time for the people, that's why nuclear weapons, the code is given to two people at least in the US and other countries also, so that one person does not decide. There is enough time also between them to decide on when to use the nuclear weapon. Why? Because it's annihilation. Once a nuclear weapon is used, bomb is used, we don't know, the entire humanity could be wiped out. That is what is known as the existential crisis. So with AI also, we are now looking at the possibilities of a existential crisis. And that is why everybody is talking about this responsible AI, not just about ethics, it's about ethics at all level. Okay, just because I have the power, you don't create such a system. So human agency, when it comes to human agency, remember we all do that, right? We tend to over trust machine recommendations. So when somebody says, should I take, say double check it or triple check it. Even if it gives a reference, double check it. Again, you see whether it's right or wrong. So that is with us. The human agency is with us. So we need to do, even if the machine gives you recommendation, whether it is, recommendation regarding a citation, whether it is a recommendation regarding a code or recommendation regarding a medicine, whatever it is, you need to not over trust the machine. In fact, if you go to any doctor, these days doctors say, oh, these days, patients or patients' relatives, they check on ChatGPT when a laboratory report comes, they check. And then they come up with all this question. True, ChatGPT will give you answers. Supposing you submit a lab report, it says what is the issue, what are the problems, what you should be concerned about. But still, it is just a machine. Don't follow that, right? So you have to trustworthy doctors when it comes to medical decisions, right? So remember, the danger is greatest when AI appears confident, fast, and objective. It is fast. That's where sometimes the problem comes, right? When it is fast and it appears to be objective, don't trust it. If it says I always don't trust a person who says I'm 100% sure. You might have heard people saying that, no? I have heard people, oh, I'm 100% sure. 100% it will come tomorrow. I always feel that if the person says 100% it will come tomorrow, it won't come. That's why he or she is emphasizing that it is 100%. Because remember, nothing is so definite. You cannot be sure that 100% it will come tomorrow. 100% this will happen tomorrow. So the point is, whether they are human beings or machines, when they are confident, you have to be skeptical. That's the rule. When somebody is overconfident, I'm more skeptical. If a doctor is very confident, no, this will work, it will happen, then you have to be very careful. That because, the possibilities of a doctor being overconfident and not being careful is there, right? So, like that same way, machines also you have to be careful. Then we have this delegation dilemma. As I said, I use ChatGPT for everything. Even when the lab report comes, I put in. But then I double check it. I go to different thing, and I go to Google also. I'll search. I'll say where is the, after all, medical information. It's much easier because much of the medical information is openly, freely available. I go to PubMed Central and check articles. So the point I'm trying is you have to be careful when you delegate some decision to a machine or a AI. Every delegation of judgment creates a question, what human capacity are we outsourcing? We already talked about outsourcing, right? Don't outsource your decision making. Don't outsource your thinking. You outsource certain tasks to AI. That's all I would say. If you outsource, I used to say, even for example, when it comes to use of remotes, when I'm talking about 30 years back when TVs came and all that, remote, see, people get up to look for remote. Instead, they can go and switch it off or switch it on there only. They don't do that. They will spend 2 minutes looking for the remote to switch off a TV, right? Instead, I said, yes, remote is useful, you use it, but you also get up and go and switch off the thing, right? So, like physical activity, mental activity, don't outsource it too much, okay? Convenience can become dependency. This is the point I want to say. Don't be dependent too much on the AI, too much on machines. Keep your, just like, we have to walk and keep our legs active because when necessary, we may have to walk, we may have to run. We may have a car, we may have everything, but we may have to walk also many a times. So keep fit. So similarly, keep your logical thinking, individual agency. Don't be de-skilled. Don't lose your critical thinking ability. You have to actually hone it. So remember, truth in the age of gender, I mentioned about this truth, right? Disinformation. It's, in fact, Windsurf called this chat GPT as salad shooters. Salad shooters, you have a device wherein it cuts the vegetables, mixes it up and shoots it like salad. But it has no pattern there. It just simply shoots. So he said that is what chat GPT is doing. Well, it generates plausible language, but it does not guarantee truth. That is something that we have to remember always. It is sounds plausible, but it's not the truth itself. So even though it can be very fluent, remember, even when some people also know they fluently talk, but it is not necessarily substantively correct, right? So the ethical obligation for us shifts from generate to verify. So we should be constantly verifying. Because we cannot prove where the idea comes from. Supposing an image is there, where did that image come? Source. It gives you the source. But if you go to the source, I don't know whether you experience it, the source has something else. It may not be exactly the actual source for that image or for that article. Right? So claim, image, code, or idea come from, we don't know. Can its origin, provenance refers to that. Can its origin be traced? Because remember, even some famous quotes, people have not been able to prove who said that. Okay. So can it be independently checked? Can we do that? Because that means you have to have more work, right? That's what I said. ChatGPT gives us more work also. It helps me in some ways. It also gives me more work. Okay. So this is the key here. Can we distinguish evidence from synthesis? What ChatGPT does is only synthesizes. That's why it's called synthetic text. Remember, it is synthetic text, right? So is it evidence? No, it's not evidence. ChatGPT may say yes, this, etc. It is not evidence. So the other, which we have already talked about, bias. Bias in data, bias in model, bias in context. Okay. Through various training data, it can be amplified by model design or optimization. It can also emerge from deployment context. Who is deploying it normally? So fairness is therefore not a one-time model property. This is for the designers or developers of the system. It's not that, okay, once I have taken fairness as a principle and my system is working. Okay. So fairness is not one number. Remember, one of the core principles of responsible AI is fair. Is it fair, right? So differentiating different definitions of fairness can also conflict. So equal treatment may not produce equal outcomes. Whether it comes to any topic, we have those debates coming up. Why should taxpayers' money be given for freebies? Why should taxpayers' money be given for this? Is it fair, etc.? So what is fairness? You have to understand that. Okay. So why we are distributing freebies or whatever you call, in my view, we shouldn't be calling them as freebies. It should be social welfare measures. Social welfare measures are not just only for poor people. All of us are actually using in one form or the other. Rich people are also using. Business people are also using. Tax holidays are given to business people, right? Businesses. Business houses enjoy tax holidays in the beginning to promote business. That is also a freebie. It's not just the poor people. So the question is, equal treatment may not produce equal outcomes. So we have to be fair in everything that we do. I'm just taking some general examples, even though it is for, as I said, gave the example of, algorithm, today's Deccan Herald article, algorithms deciding that, right? This happens that privacy and the right to opacity. It should be, in fact, in India, we are not so careful about privacy. Every time everybody takes your mobile number, wherever you go, right? For example, in the US, nobody asks for your mobile number. What they ask for is only your social security number, which is not the same as mobile number, right? So like this, what I'm saying, we are not bothered about the privacy issues here. That's why, you get all these junk calls, right? Every day, half the calls are actually marketing calls, right? Why? Because our mobile data is not secure. Somewhere somebody would have used that mobile number data to give it to anybody and everybody. And that is being used to actually for marketing or even for other kinds of con jobs, right? So it can be, AI systems can infer more than users consciously disclose, right? Consent becomes complicated when data are reused, combined, or inferred. So that's why anonymizing of data is very important. See, in healthcare, for example, health data is very useful. For genomic data is very useful, but the data has to be anonymized. That is, it should not be connected to the person. Privacy is not only secrecy, it controls who, how, over how one is represented. Okay. So surveillance, because that's what the governments do. They want to do it. They want to monitor you everywhere, right? Facial recognition. In airports and all that, facial recognition is there. In fact, in the AI-Con book, and I know of many such instances, they use facial recognition to wrongly identify criminals, or your DNA data is used to wrongly identify that. So there have been many such cases where whether it is facial recognition or other things are used against people. Okay. So the ethical question is what should remain unobserved? See, today, everywhere these cameras are there for security purposes, yes. But it also raises the issue of privacy. So that is why ethical issues are very, very important. AI and human dignity, right? It's not just a so efficient because we are using AI for efficiency purposes, right? Because it affects your identity, it affects your dignity, it affects everything, right? So should not become a score. So I think we are coming towards the so the live I will end with this. Before deployment, purpose, data, risk affected groups. You need to look at that. During employment, monitoring is important, human oversight is important, incident response is important. This is primarily for designers. So before you deploy, you identify why are you collecting the data? What is the purpose of data? Why do you want mobile numbers all the time, right? What is the risk? How does it affect groups? Then while you are deploying AI, monitoring, how much of monitoring is required, what is the oversight that is required, and what should be the response of the system. Then continuously it should be audited. See, this doesn't happen that regularly. Auditing where it is going wrong, how it should be, when some system should be retired, how to address these issues. So basically, this is just one example from the US government. Govern, map, measure, and manage. So this is the principle that governance that they are using. Governments establish responsibility and culture. Map, you understand context, risks, etc. And continuously it should be measured. So these are some of the issues that we are talking about. And I come back to UNESCO again because I consider, not just because I have been a UNESCO consultant, if you look at some of the things that UNESCO is doing, it's doing many things, whether it is AI, whether it is responsible AI, or human rights issues, human rights violations, they are doing a good job in my view. That's why I end with this governance. When UNESCO talks about human rights approach, we need to look at human rights and dignity. They are the foundation. Key concerns include, that's why it says fairness, etc. So that is the major issue we are talking about. So regulations have to be formulated, which will take care of. Remember, I already mentioned EU AI Act. EU AI Act is one of the best acts available today to take care of this. Okay. So as of August 2026, transparency obligations under Article 50 apply. So that's what it is. EU Act, AI Act is taking care of. So now we come to the final issue. When it comes to education, we have to think about AI literacy. So we need to incorporate all of this in our education. So don't say, how do we stop students using AI? How do we redesign learning, which I mentioned already? Probably in some of the Western countries, they are moving towards a different approach to examination rather than written type of examination, rather than assignment type of examination. So we need to develop how we redesign learning and how we strengthen thinking. Okay? So they should be able to explain, explore, and receive feedback rather than say, don't use ChatGPT. Okay. So when it comes to research, also the same thing. Accelerate, don't abdicate your responsibility. As I said, you use ChatGPT to do it better, improve it, but don't give it the task itself. Okay. Assist in all of these things, but remain responsible for the evidence interpretation. It should be your point of view, it should be your interpretation rather than AI's interpretation. Okay, and as I said, disclose assistance. When you write a paper, you write to what extent you have used and what role the chat GPT has played in your article. Okay. So this is a practical test. What human goal does it serve? Well, when I use ChatGPT, it serves the goal of doing my talk better. When I use, according to me, a nice design is useful to represent something, right? So that serves the purpose. Agency, who decides and who can override? Well, I decide whether I want to use this. whether the woman picture that it gave is right or wrong, or whether I want to change it. Evidence. How do we know that the output is reliable? If I am giving evidence data, we need to double check the data, because AI can go get it wrong, right? Equity. Who may be disadvantaged with this? So that's why we talk about it should be available to everybody, right? Accountability. These are all the practical tests that we use. So another important thing is we need to have a register wherever it is used, etc. Okay, audit. So responsibility gives us power, ethics gives us reasons. So I will end with this. There are so many books. I have just given only some examples of responsible AI, etc. Coming wave. These are some of the books on responsible AI. So, key takeaway, I end with this: human agency and voice. Remember, the core voice is yours. It should be your article, your voice, not the AI's voice. I want to say this, you use it to make it better, sound better. That's all. Then, critical reflection. Okay. Remember, I don't know, these days many people say that they are not using reading books. That's why, I keep showing you books like this, not just for showcasing, but as I said, so this is a book just recently I got. Since I talk about medical, this is The Emperor of All Melodies. So these are the books, I mean, any book on any topic, they actually are the ones which will help you reflect on any topic. Read. I always say, not just I read, therefore I am. So whatever I have become, it's only because of my reading habit. So encourage your own reading habit. Then you can ask good questions to, yeah. Then you can say, can I relate this to this? How about this book? How about that book, etc.? You can ask the chat GPT more questions. Okay. Reading rather than rapid automated consumption. Then always accountability is, that's another word that responsible AI people use. Guardrails. You need to have that fence around it so that there is people don't fall off that. Okay. Academic honor standards. So we need to have that honor. Okay, honor code is important. I need to say how much I have used, how much I have not used, etc. Okay. So I'll end with this. If you have any questions. Sorry, I did not hear the question. Was there a question?
Hello everyone, any question?
They are hungry. Is it? 3 hours is too long.
It was
Okay.
very interesting, madam.
No question? What of thanks? Good afternoon to all respected library professionals present in this virtual forum. Myself, Dr. Vijay Rahane, working as librarian in METS Institute of Technology Polytechnic, Nashik, Maharashtra. It gives me a immense pleasure and privilege to purpose of vote of thanks on behalf of UGC MMTTC Mysore University. Today we have privilege to be a resource person, Honorable Professor Shalini Aras ma'am, with us for morning session presentation. First topic, from tool to those partner, integrating AI in teaching and research. And second topic, from capability to responsibility, navigating the ethics of AI. Madam, on behalf of UGC MMTTC Mysore University, in this online refresher course is in library and information science, I extend a deep sense of heartfelt gratitude for your valuable guidance and support. Heartful thanks to UGC MMTCC Mysore University to organize this refresher course for all library professionals to uplift their knowledge and develop the library with new ideas and concepts which we are learning from all the sessions. Thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you,
welcome.
madam. Very good, madam.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
lunch.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, madam.
Wonderful session.